Good morning, everyone. We are Group 6, and today we will present our project, Reproduction and Analysis for SimVLA for Robotic Manipulation. This is the outline for our presentation. First, we will introduce SimVLA and explain the motivation for our study. Then we will describe our experimental setup and the methodology. Next, we will assess the effect for the batch size training set and the learning rate. After that, we will present our continual learning experiments using the experience replay. Finally, we will summarize our finding and discuss the future work. This slide explains why robotic manipulation is challenging. Robots work in dynamic environment with a challenging object and incomplete information. The VLA models are important because they combine vision, language, and robot control in one system. However, many published results rely on the powerful hardware, which is not available to every research team. So SimVLA is a version language action model based on a small VLM 500M backbone and a flow match action head. The original paper actually have a 98.6% of the success rate on the LIBERO benchmark, using for 4H100 GPUs and a large batch size in our project. We use more limited hardware with a per GPU batch size of the only 16. Therefore, we investigate how training constraint affect performance, and with the experience replay can reduce the catastrophic forgetting. So next part, Bella will explain the background from VLA models to SimVLA.
Hi, let me introduce our background of our project. For this slide, it shows how SimVLA works. The model takes 3 inputs: an image, a language instruction, and a robot state. A vision language backbone reads them. Then, the action head turns them into robot actions. The key point is we did not change the model. We keep it fixed, so we could test only the training and the replay parts. Let me give a quick picture of related work. There are 4 areas. Earlier VLA model shows that we can combine vision and language to control robots. Other study focused on making training cheaper and faster. For continual learning, some methods try to reduce forgetting, but they change the module's architecture. However, 3 important questions are still open. First, can SimVLA still work well on limited hardware? Second, does training tasks one by one cause forgetting? Third, can simple replay strategy help without redesigning the model? These 3 gaps are what motivated our study. So, on this slide, let's compare the original SimVLA setup with ours. The original team had some serious hardware for H100 GPUs and a batch size of 256. But we didn't have that. Our setup was much smaller, so we could only run a batch size of 64. Because of that, we focused on 3 things we could actually change: the batch size, how long we trained, and the learning rate. And the top of that, we also treat continual learning with a few different replay ratios. So this is the dataset we used, called LIBERO. It's split into 5 task groups. The first one is LIBERO 90. We only used for training. We never tested on it. We measured our result on the other 4 groups. Each one checks a different skill, such as long tasks, understanding space, following instructions, and handling objects. So that covers our setup and data size. I will now pass it over to Tengyue to show you what we actually found.
Okay, now I will start with our first experiment, which looks at per GPU batch size. The result was very clear. When the batch size was too small, the model almost failed to learn. With per GPU batch size of 2 and 4, the success rate was about 0%. With batch size of 8, it only reached 2%. The best setting we could run was batch size 16, but even then, the success rate was only 18% at 100,000 steps. So the key point is that SimVLA is very sensitive to batch size. Under our hardware limitation, batch size became the most important training constraint. After that, we wanted to see whether longer training could improve the result, so we fixed the per GPU batch size at 16, which was our best feasible setting, and trained the model up to 200,000 steps. The improvement was significant. In the earlier stage, from 25,000 to around 125,000 steps, the success rate increased quite slowly and stayed below 40%. But after 150,000 steps, the model improved much faster. Finally, at 200,000 steps, it reached about 71%. This shows that longer training does help a lot, but it still cannot fully reach the original SimVLA result of 98.6%. So these slides give a direct comparison between the original SimVLA and our results. The original SimVLA used a global batch size of 256 and achieved 98.6% success. In our setup, the largest global batch size we could use was only 64. So with 100,000 training steps, our baseline result was 18%. After increasing the training length to 200,000 steps, our best result improved to around 70%. So longer training recovered more than 50 percentage points, which is a large improvement. However, the remaining gap shows that longer training can only partly compensate for smaller batch size. We also tested the learning rate multiplier. When we increased it from 0.1 to 0.2, the success rate improved from 18% to 29% under the same 100,000 step setting. So learning rate does have an effect, but the improvement was much smaller than the improvement from longer training. We also faced some practical limitations, like single GPU training was not reliable because of memory limits. We also tried reducing the image size from 384 to 224, but the vision encoder was tightly connected to 384 by 384 input structure, so this would require major architectural changes. Also, each 100,000 steps took around 27 hours, so we could not do a full learning rate search. Overall, training skill was still the dominant factor, and next Mo will continue with the continual learning part.
Thank you. After examining performance and resource constraints, we move on to our second research question, which focuses on continual learning. In this experiment, the model was first trained on several LIBERO task groups, including LIBERO 10, LIBERO Goal, and LIBERO Spatial. We then continued training the same model on a new task group called LIBERO Object. The key question was whether the model could learn this new task while still retaining what it had learned previously. As shown in the graph, the answer was largely no. Although performance of the new object task increased significantly, performance on all previously learned task groups dropped to 0. This demonstrates a well-known continual learning problem called catastrophic forgetting. While learning new information causes previously acquired knowledge to be overwritten. End result, it gives us the average forgetting score of 67.3 percentage points. Moving on, to address this problem, to solve this issue, we introduce a simple experiment replay strategy. The idea is straightforward. Instead of training only on the new task data, we periodically reintroduce samples from previously learned task groups. During training, we tested these replay settings, which are test 10%, 20%, and 30%. The results show a clear trend. As the replay ratio increased, the model became much better at retaining knowledge from earlier tasks while still learning the new task. Most importantly, the average forgetting score dropped dramatically from over 67 percentage points without replay to just over 3 percentage points with 30% replay. This suggests that even a relatively simple replay mechanism can be highly efficient. Now, while replay clearly improved knowledge retention as we have seen before, we also wanted to determine which replay ratio provided the best overall balance. This table shows the performance of all task groups under different replay settings. Without replay, the model performed well on the new object task but completely forgot the earlier tasks. As replay was increased, retention improved significantly across all previous task groups. The 30% replay setting produced the most balanced outcome overall, maintaining strong performance on the new task while preserving a substantial amount of previously learned knowledge. For this reason, we selected 30% replay as our best performing continual learning configuration. Now, we have talked about the numerical aspect of our analysis. Let's talk about the qualitative success and failure analysis. Looking at the overall continual learning results, several important observations were emerged. As you can see on the right side, it shows us the successful manipulation, and on the left side, it shows us a case of one of the failure manipulations. Replay improved knowledge retention and allows successful task completion in many scenarios. However, as you can see from the video, some failures remain, particularly involving precise grasping and end effector alignment. These failures suggest that limited training resources still affect fine-grained manipulation performance. Now, in order to conclude this project, I'll invite Lauren.
Okay. This table shows other experiments. These main things we found are that a smaller batch size makes performance much worse. Training for longer can help a little, and experience replay helps a lot to stop the model from forgetting. After the continual learning methods we tried, 30% replay gave the best result. One big lesson is that good results for large VLA models depend a lot on how strong and hardware is. We found that batch size changes not only the speed, but also how stable the train is and how good the final result is. We also saw that being good at many tasks doesn't mean the model is good at continual learning. Last, replay was a simple and useful way to reduce forgetting, and we didn't need to change the model itself. In conclusion, we can reproduce SimVLA with weaker hardware, but the performance is still lower than the original result. The batch size for each GPU was the biggest problem, and the longer training only helped a little when the batch size was small. We also showed that training on tasks one after another makes the model forget a lot, but experience replay can reduce this. In the future, we want to try more replay methods, more learning rate tests, smaller resolution models, other continual learning methods, and later real robots. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.